Atomic structure. So here on the screen, we have three different isotopes of carbon. I have carbon 12, carbon 13, and carbon 14. So looking at these three atoms here, we want to go ahead and compare them. So these are called isotopes of carbon. So these are all isotopes of carbon here. Now, protons have a positive charge. So if we count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if we look at the next one, we still have 6. The last one also has 6. So all three of these carbon atoms have 6 protons. Neutrons are neutral. So if we look here and count, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This next picture has 7 and then 8. So this is where the name carbon 12, carbon 13, and carbon 14 come from. It's the sum of these protons and neutrons. So I'd like you to go ahead and pause this video and work through the next set of questions. And you can return here whenever you are ready to check your work. So protons. Protons have a positive charge and they are located in the nucleus. Neutrons are neutral or they have no charge and they are also located in the nucleus. The electrons are negatively charged and they are orbiting the nucleus, and those rings are showing the energy levels. So those electrons are orbiting the nucleus within specific energy levels. So looking at this notation here, the bottom number is called the atomic number. What does this represent and what is it equal to? It's going to give us the number of protons on bottom. The top number is mass number, so in this case it's 12, and we get that by adding together the protons and the neutrons. So for an atom of carbon, what is always going to be the same? It's going to be the atomic number. Carbon always has 6 protons. If it had something other than 6, if it had 7, for example, it would be nitrogen and it wouldn't be carbon. So mass number can vary because we can have different numbers of neutrons. Ions are charged particles. So in a neutral atom, the number of protons is equal to the number of electrons. Ions are charged particles that are formed when an atom gains or loses electrons. So if we lose electrons, remember that electrons have a negative charge. So if you lose something negative, you're going to become positive. We call that a cation. So you see how there's this T in cation that looks like a plus sign? So cation is going to be a positively charged particle. If it gains electrons, it's going to become negative. We call this an anion. So I'd like you to go ahead and pause this video and work on the next couple of questions and return here when you are ready to check your work. So looking at those carbon atoms, these are all neutral or uncharged. So how do we know that this is neutral? Each atom has 6 protons and 6 electrons. So think of 6 protons as plus 6 and think of 6 electrons as minus 6. So when you combine together plus 6 and minus 6, you get 0 or neutral charge. So an atom has 11 protons and 10 electrons. What is the identity of the atom and what is its charge? So first, the 11 protons tells us that this is sodium. Sodium is the only element with 11 protons. If it doesn't have 11 protons, it's not sodium. Now, what about its charge? Well, we have 11 protons, so think of that as plus 11. And then we have 10 electrons, so think of that as minus 10. So when I put those together, because I have one more proton than electron, I'm going to end up with a plus 1 charge. So because there is one more proton than electrons, the charge is plus 1. So when an atom has a charge, the charge is written as a superscript number after the element symbol. If the atom is neutral, there will be no number. The mass number and atomic number may or may not be included depending on what information is needed. So remember that the top number is the mass number. The bottom number here is the atomic number. So these notations are all used differently, but we can extract a lot of the same information from them. So let's start looking at question 7 here. So here's where you're going to want a periodic table. So O is oxygen. Oxygen always has 8 protons. And when we look at this particular oxygen, there's no charge given. So we can assume that the number of protons and electrons are the same, and we have a neutral atom here. Next, I have Cl minus 1. We call that chloride. So chlorine has 17 protons. This has a minus 1 charge. So that tells me that I must have one more electron than proton. So we gained 1 electron here and formed an anion. Next, I have copper plus 2 and copper plus 3. So copper always has 29 protons. And since this charge is plus 2, there must be 2 more protons than electrons. So this lost electrons and formed a cation. Copper plus 3 still has 29 protons. But since the charge is plus 3, I have 3 less electrons than protons. So this would lose an electron, lose 3 electrons and form a cation. S minus 2, we would call this sulfide. Sulfur has 16 protons. Since this is minus 2, there must be 2 more electrons than protons. So this guy gained electrons in order to form an anion. Question 8 here. You're going to use the periodic table, and this is going to put together everything that we talked about for atomic structure. So you're going to give the element symbol, atomic number, protons, neutrons, electrons, mass number, charge, and tell me if it's a cation, an anion, or neutral. So you can go ahead and pause the video now and spend a little bit of time practicing these. And then when you're ready to check your work, you can return here. So here are the correct answers here. Make sure that you are including the element symbol with the atomic number and mass number as well.